What's stored in the body is bigger than you. Beyond epigenetics, embodiment, ancestral memory, and nervous system inheritance. Welcome to Beyond the Spot, decolonizing healing one brain at a time. I am your host, Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, licensed professional counselor, healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Today, we lean into a truth I've seen in my own life, the lives of my clients, and in community. What's stored in the body is bigger than you. The stories our bodies carry didn't start with us. They come from our families, our ancestors, our communities, and the systems we've had to survive. Science calls part of this epigenetics. Yes, trauma can absolutely shift how genes express themselves. But if we stop at biology, we miss the fuller story. How trauma also moves through silence, through parenting, through systems of oppression, and through spirit. Just an invitation, a reflection to kind of welcome your system and your sense of your full self into this space. When you notice your own patterns, whether it be shut down, vigilance, fear, do they feel like they started with you or like they carry echoes of someone else's story? Just want to invite you to sit with that for a moment. Beyond the Spot, Decolonizing Healing One Brain at a Time, is a podcast that weaves, my first love, of course, brain spotting, and somatic informed modalities with embodied healing, cultural consciousness, and real talk about trauma, resilience, and recovery. Hosted by Tracy Gantlin-Monroy, a licensed professional counselor, spiritual healer, and the first Black female brain spotting trainer in the world. Each episode dares to dismantle mental health myths, uplift lived experiences, and restore collective wisdom. One conversation at a time. Beyond the Spot podcast is for educational purposes and is not therapy. Please reach out to licensed medical and mental health professionals. Thank you. It's important for me to give a context. So, where I'm coming from, I'm starting today from this idea of survival mode across generations. When trauma goes unnamed, it doesn't vanish, it becomes survival mode, passed down like an inheritance. Families teaching silence to avoid danger, children overachieving because perfection meant safety. How about communities normalizing hypervigilance and or hypervigilance because history demanded it? And I want to invite clinicians and even for clients that may be listening. When you see people pleasing or mistrust of authority as a clinician, ask yourself, whose survival story are they carrying? And even from the client perspective, if you feel stuck in patterns you can't explain, know this: your nervous system may be honoring those who came before you. And believe it or not, the work that we do or don't do can be a benefit or a cost to our descendants who are to come. And I just want to extend a reflective invitation. Which coping strategies in your life feel older than you? Yeah, I'm taking you back. I'm giving the invitations, the work, the experience. They're all yours to be had. Yeah. I want to start from a place of epigenetics. We're going to cover various modes of transportation when it comes to trauma. There's no way I could just stop with epigenetics because it's one piece of the puzzle. Science tells us trauma changes the body at the cellular level. Stress hormones alter gene expression. How about Holocaust survivors, children, show heightened cortisol? How about the descendants of enslaved Africans carry markers of chronic stress? Yes, absolutely. Biology is part of the inheritance. But our people already knew this. Our grandmother said, "This grief lives in my bones." Indigenous elders said, "The land remembers." Be clear, science is just catching up to what we have known and experienced. Clinicians, where do you lean on science to validate what cultures have named for centuries? And let's be clear, because even as clinicians, we should also be client somewhere to even carry this work. You know, I saw an interesting article today that came to me where it was talking about the mirror neurons. It was talking about this idea of identity, disillusion, or um, separation for clinicians and how we carry our client stuff that oftentimes we don't reflect, work on, or be with our stuff. And it's coming from an insula perspective. And so when I start talking about even, you know, the coping strategies in your life that feel older than you, or this idea of what wisdom from your people affirms your body remembers more than your mind. See, these are some inquiries that we got to start sitting with for ourselves, right? How about this notion of silence as transmission? It is a thing, the unspoken. Ever heard our family secrets keep us sick, keep us ill? How many of you all know that there are family secrets that run through your lineage? They absolutely run through mine. And somehow there's this idea that if we don't speak it, it doesn't exist. That's not true. Not all trauma is in DNA. Some trauma is in silence. The families who never spoke of war, the children who never heard migration stories, the hush around enslavement, the refusal to name abuse, and the list goes on. It goes on and on. Silence itself communicates danger. The nervous system feels the grief, the shame, the avoidance. Cultural studies call this post-memory. Yeah. This is where children are inheriting vivid impressions of events they never lived. I've sat with clients who had no conscious memory of violence, but when their gaze landed in brain spotting sessions, their body shook, cried, released grief, not only theirs, but their grandmothers, their grandfathers, stuff they had no idea had occurred. What was never spoken in your family, but always felt? Just an invitation. Nothing here is mandatory. All at your own rate, pace, speed, all of that. Because the awareness is for you in your system. There's also relational and cultural transmission. Trauma flows through caregiving. How about a parent in survival mode may be emotionally absent? A grandparent who lived through scarcity may even teach hoarding or mistrust. What about communities shaped by racism or colonization and how they may normalize hypervigilance, hypervigilance as protection? These aren't personality traits, y'all. These are survival strategies, remember? Huh. What happens in the brain happens in the body. What happens in the body happens in the brain. Facts. How about some of these ideas or experiences that many of us have? How about s- how about this notion of, you better not cry, isn't just parenting? That's survival talking. A client once told me rest felt unsafe because her mother worked 3 jobs. That's survival encoded as culture. Y'all know what I'm talking about. For all the clinicians out there, what symptoms, quote unquote, might actually be inherited strategies? And for all the clients out there, which of your coping patterns feel like echoes of someone else's life? Yeah, because there's also this idea of structural and systemic transmission of trauma. We don't just inherit trauma through family, we live inside its architecture. Redlining, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, immigration laws, boarding schools, colonization. Need I say more? It's systemic. Yeah. Yeah, it's real. Fanon wrote that the colonized body carries trauma even when the colonizer is gone. Paulo Freire, one of my favorites, said oppression teaches both the oppressed and the oppressor how to see the world. Structure transmits trauma as much as bloodlines. Don't kid yourself. Just an invitation for a reflection. How do systems around you, albeit schools, healthcare, policing, carry trauma forward in ways individuals alone cannot undo? And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to always say it. Beyond the structural and systemic transmission, what about this idea of spiritual and ancestral transmission? Anybody ever heard of church hurt? Or how about spiritual trauma, religious trauma, all these things? Yeah. And in the midst of spiritual and ancestral transmission, there still remains spirit. Many cultures say trauma is carried in the soul. African traditions speak of ancestral grief needing ritual release. I can attest to that. True T. I recognize that I stand on the shoulders of the ancestors. Indigenous practices create ceremonies for communal healing. So not only are we oftentimes traumatized in communities, we also heal in community. Ask anybody who's ever attended a brain spotting training. Yeah. Fact is, in brain spotting, whether it's a session, whether it's a training, I've witnessed tears that didn't feel like one person's, especially during neuro experiential demos. And the attendee said, it feels like my lineage is breathing again. And I'm going to tell you something fascinating about that for me as a brain spotting trainer. I've had I don't want to say ornate, but it's definitely different that when as a trainer that I do the neuro experiential demos where we take a volunteer that's attending and we demonstrate every frame setup that we teach. I can't tell you how many times I've witnessed the ancestors show up and I can feel them and I can see them. And upon expressing that, because sometimes I don't, sometimes the person who's actually the volunteer will share it. But I've been known to see, hey, I noticed XYZ standing there with you, and the tears just release. And they share what that is, who that is. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. What rituals of your people, drumming, prayer, lament, dance, were meant to metabolize trauma before Western therapy existed? How might reclaiming them be part of your healing? Because it's actually a part of mine. You got a witness right here. Brain spotting for me becomes inherited healing. Brain spotting is absolutely more Eastern medicine than Western medicine. That was one of the attractions for me because for me, brain spotting is highly spiritually attuned and spiritual. For many I've met on my brain spotting journey, it's been artistic. And for some, artistic, straight clinical, embodiment, you name it. Because the beauty of brain spotting is it meets trauma where it lives in the nervous system. You don't need to tell the whole story. You don't need to name every generation's wound. The body can release what it's been holding. In brain spotting, the body speaks and we listen. Listen, no pun intended. I've witnessed clients, patients, group members describe healing as crying with my grandmother's tears. Another said, again, this idea of lineage breathing again. There's something about that. Even during the BIPOC brain spotting intensive that I hosted right here in Atlanta in my office, it was so amazing. On an occasion, I invited the participants to a grief circle. Yep, you got it. And I actually volunteered to go first, made it clear that, listen, this is voluntary. You do not have to participate. And it was so healing for me and so many others who were present because it took me right there to my grief that I hold for my dad. I now hold it differently. Absolutely. Just an invitation here. How do you hold space for inherited trauma you'll never fully know in your role as a clinician when it shows up in that therapy space, in that counseling space, in that energetic space? And for clients, what if your healing doesn't stop with you, but flows through you? You know, I often have that conversation with my bestie, y'all know her, Suki. And I say to her oftentimes, what if you're the one to take that walk for your family's generational healing? What would that mean for you? What does that look like for you? Could it even be a consideration? Yeah. What's stored in the body is bigger than you. It's history. It's silence. It's caregiving. It's systems. It's spirit. And it is absolutely spiritual, oftentimes. But here's the truth: if trauma can be transmitted, so can healing. Let me say that again. If trauma can be transmitted by all the various modes that we are aware that trauma moves, so can healing. When you regulate your nervous system, you're not only tending to yourself, you're offering freedom to those who came after you, and rest to those who came before you. Here's the tea. And I'm quite open about sharing this. And this is part of my work when it comes to generational healing. I learned some time ago, and I actually believe it because it makes sense. And I've supported myself and so many others to be freed. What we inherit by way of trauma from our ancestors and those who came before us, we only inherit what was incomplete for them. And not only do we inherit trauma from our ancestors, we also inherit gifts, talents, and all the things. But we don't necessarily give that as much airplay. So that's important for me to name that because it's true. I'll tell you something. I know good and well I inherited my good looks from my grandmother. Maybe I'll post that side by side picture for you all. And it's so interesting to me because, we all kind of grow up thinking we have our own look, or we think maybe we got it from this parent, that parent, or whatever. I'm here to tell you, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, Lena Gantlin, shouting her out, could have passed me off as her own born child. I am actually going to upload that picture for you to take a look. I'm going to figure out how to do that. One of my dear friends and colleagues, I shared the picture with her, and she literally put it side by side and sent it back to me. So, my first cousin, Cricket, as we call her, I will not call her by her government name because she emphasizes that her name is Cricket, and I'm gonna let her have that. Cricket has a lot of the family's heirlooms, pictures, and all the things. She is an elder cousin to me. I'm in my 50s. She's in her 60s. Me and her kid sister are the youngest two, right? So, Cricket Dad and my dad are brothers, right? And her dad and my dad are both late. My dad was the youngest of his siblings. But nonetheless, that just really blessed me to be able to say that. But just know what we inherited from our ancestors was not a curse. It was not. It was what was incomplete for them. And just notice all the gifts and the talents and the things that was completed by them that we inherited. Facts. Just my perspective on it, and I want to share it with you. I like that idea of being able, through the freedom we receive through our healing, to be able to offer rest to those who came before me, before us. Because I'm going to tell you something. I'm a Geechee gal from Charleston, South Carolina. When I tell you that my folks need rest, they need rest. Any small part that I can do with the awareness, with the knowledge, with the access I have, I'm down. I've been down. So much so, it doesn't just stop with my lineage. It's also an invitation and an expression of love towards each one of you. I promise. Yeah, I promise. And I want to give a final reflective invitation. Clinicians, where do you risk reducing trauma to biology alone? And for every client, what survival strategies and you feel older than you? I'm asking that again. And for all of us, what practices can we reclaim so the next generation inherits liberation? Not just for survival, whereby we're able to bequeath to them this idea of adaptation. Because what's stored in the body is bigger than you, and so is healing. Thank you for spending this time with me. And for those that this time spent together made impact, please share, please subscribe. I appreciate your support. And know that the time that I reclaimed is what I use to produce this work, passion work, every week. And I got to tell you something. There's such a benefit because it reiterates things that I know, and to speak it becomes a whole nother level of existence. So thank you for allowing me time and space to be with you around my ideas and my perspective as a licensed mental health clinician who's also been called to this work of healing and restoration, not for any one group or one person, but globally. Because you see, this work is not my job, never that. It is my call. And it's very humbling for me to not only be called, but to be chosen, that I can rock this mic any day, any night. I got tickled because I was speaking to my childhood best friend this weekend, and it was Saturday morning, maybe, or Sunday morning. We talk almost every day. There's not a week that goes by that we don't engage. And she had the audacity to say to me, now, girl, don't go do no recording because your voice ain't right. Your voice ain't right. That ain't the voice. That ain't the voice. I was like, really? You wake me up and I'm talking to you with the just woke up voice that I would only answer the phone for you, my sister, my mama, my husband, my son. Y'all know what I'm talking about. When you get up in the morning and you sound like wonk, 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 that everyone is not allowed to hear you in that tone and voice, at least not me anyway. Please have an amazing rest of your day, your night, your month, your year, and all of your life. I absolutely love you. You have been beautifully and wonderfully made. And I am because you are, and I so appreciate the support. If today's episode resonated with your nervous system or your spirit, share it with someone who's still unlearning and reach out to me. My website is gracecommunitycounseling.com. You can reach me on Instagram at Monroy LPC. That is MONROY LPC. Also, I have offerings from retreats to brain spotting trainings to workshops, you name it. And I am also a speaker. So if you ever need a speaker with my skill set, look me up. Give me a call. Let's see what can happen. And absolutely for you clinicians and adjacent body healers, feel free to reach out and attend a brain spotting training. We have trainings all the time. Thank you.